So what an exciting day we have here. This is it's the feast of St. Francis. Actually, the feast of St. Francis is October 4th. And so what we do every year is we transfer that to a Sunday so that we can gather together out here and bless our animals, our beloved pets. And so I want to talk about our animals. I want to talk about St. Francis also. And I think to kind of get us to that place, I want to begin with a quote from the philosopher. He was a Jewish philosopher, Martin Buber, and I think he's actually kind of quoting the Christian mystical text, "The Cloud of Unknowing," if you know that one. So this is the quote: "The God that can be put in a box is not God." And I think this really kind of, that captures this feast of St. Francis. The God that can be put in a box isn't God. And that's why we come outside today. That's why we come out of the box. To remind ourselves, actually we come out because with our animals there's going to be some chaos. That's another good reason to come out. But I think that animal chaos and the unpredictability, that is tied to this feast day as well, because our animals, our beloved pets, have this way of shaking up our lives a little bit, if you haven't noticed. They help us escape from that part of our lives that is sanitized and controlled, that part of our lives where the blinders are up, our narrow kind of focused lives. And they somehow have this way of helping us open up. They help us in our lives to get outside the box. And they have this way of kind of breaking our tight grasp on having to have like everything practically perfect in every way, to kind of quote Mary Poppins. Because what they really do, what our pets really do, is they open up our hearts. And anytime our hearts are opened up, even just a little, we are one step closer to a God that is not in the box. When I was, this is a story, when I was young, I used to go visit a woman in our neighborhood, a neighbor of ours. I think I go really to visit her because I knew that if I knocked on her door, she would always have like a piece of pie or a cookie or like something my mom didn't want me to get a hold of. But what I remember about this woman and her house is kind of like, one, I remember that she had probably more money than God. Everything in her house was like in its place. Everything in her house was like a priceless, like museum quality antique. And she herself was very proper, always answered the door, just buttoned up, makeup on. But then she had these cats, like big cats, huge cats that would like roam her house. And these cats had shredded every antique armrest and on every chair, and like they had shredded the bottom of every sofa in her house. And she didn't care. She didn't care a bit. She loved these cats. These cats, they kept her company. They kept her in touch with some sort of deeper primal love. These cats, I think, were one of the things that kind of helped her keep her kind. They reminded her to be a little flexible and open as she aged. And when I think about it, when I think about her and her cats and what her cats had taught her, and then what she had taught me, were very important lessons about kindness, about what matters and what doesn't matter. And I will never, ever forget those like beautifully destroyed antiques in her house. This is one of the blessings of our animals. They help call us back to what matters. They call us back to a simpler kind of love that's beyond our attachments, beyond our control, beyond the nice, neat boxes that we put our lives in, the nice, neat boxes that we can put our God in. St. Francis, if you know his story, he was actually raised in a very wealthy family. I imagine they had a lot of like priceless antiques too. But early on, Francis rejected that box and that life and those trappings because they did not matter. And he made himself poor so he could be among the poor. And so he could be closer to God. And so he could be free in his heart. When we think about St. Francis, we think about a man who was this itinerant preacher who wandered, who traveled, lived close to nature. It's said that he would go out and preach to animals. He and his followers, they took vows of a simple way, of poverty, chastity, obedience. They wore just simple brown robes. And it's said that St. Francis would not allow his monks to be ordained priests inside the church because their way was outside. It was out there. When you read about him, it's like he did everything. Every movement of his was away from the confines and the attachments and the external trappings of man and towards simply what mattered: nature, animals, care for the poor, for the least, the last, the little. He had deep devotion, it said, for the Holy Eucharist, for the fellowship at God's table. And so this feast day of St. Francis, it is a day that calls us to step outside, to see God in the world around us on this beautiful day. It's a day when we remember to care for all of God's creatures and all of God's creation. It's a day when we remember and we recall and we're called to a simple kind of love that matters most. And so through this example of St. Francis, through the example of our animals, we remember this day that the God that can be put in a box isn't God. Amen.